Hey Lotus Eaters, this is Harry speaking. Just to clarify as a disclaimer that this segment was recorded before we found out that Jussie Smollett had been found guilty on 5 of 6 charges, so just keep that in mind as you're watching. Did you know that BLM supports liars?
No.
I know, shocking development. Who could have seen this one coming? Well, I'm here to break the news to you. I'm going to break it to you slow. I'm going to say it nice and slow. BLM has a very, very well-recorded history of supporting and condoning liars and spreading hoaxes. And we've got another example of one right now. Anybody who's been following it, we've covered it a little bit on the podcast, will be aware that the Jussie Smollett, the Jussie Smollett court case is currently ongoing in America, and there's been some developments ongoing with that, but we're here mainly to talk about the BLM coverage of that and some of the other hoaxes that they have been happy to perpetuate throughout culture and society over the past few years since they originally emerged. So here we have Melina Abdullah, who is one of the co-founders of the Los Angeles branch of Black Lives Matter, saying that as they move into closing arguments in the Jussie Smollett trial, we must courageously love and protect one another and always remember that police lie. We love you, Jussie. Hashtag Jussie Smollett. Hashtag police lie. Hashtag cops lie. Yeah, Melina, we know cops can lie. That's not any big news that anyone's aware of. It's more the fact that Jussie is so obviously lying. For those unaware of the case that's ongoing, basically back in early 2019, Jussie Smollett filed a police report to the Chicago Police Department saying that he had been the victim of a hate crime where 2 men in the middle of the night, I think it was like 2 a.m., while Jussie was just taking, as you do, a winter 2 a.m. stroll in the snow to go pick up a Subway, he was accosted by 2 white men, very important fact, 2 white men wearing MAGA hats who beat him up shouting, "This is MAGA country, son." Because this is a regular occurrence in deep blue Democrat Chicago, that you get many MAGA-wearing miscreants roaming the streets looking for trouble. And he just got beaten up. They poured bleach on him and put a noose around his neck. Oh my God, honestly, Jussie, if that's true, that's terrible. That's awful. Except it's rubbish, because as soon as the police started looking into this, they found CCTV footage of the incident, as far as I'm aware. I'm not as up to date with this as some may be, but I'm pretty sure that this is all correct. As soon as they found CCTV footage, they found the 2 people attacking him were not white, they were black, and the attack did not look particularly devastating in the way that Jussie was trying to make it out to be, bearing in mind he says he was beaten up by 2 strong men, and then you see in all the interviews following this that he had a few surface-level scratches and bruises on his face, and then they managed to track down the 2 people who were involved in the incident, who were a couple of Nigerian immigrants who Jussie knew personally, one of which was Jussie's personal trainer,
Right.
And who admitted that, Jussie paid us to fake a hate crime so that he could use it as leverage, because Jussie Smollett is an actor, was an actor on the set of Empire, a television show in America, and he was going to use the idea of him being the victim of a hate crime to leverage more money out of the producers for his performances. So all around, pretty scummy thing to do.
What a bellend.
Yeah, that's what we're going to trial for at the moment. I believe it's disturbing the peace is the charge put up against him for filing that fake police report and trying to gin up a load of hysteria around himself. Not a particularly honourable thing to do, but BLM has always been one to champion those with no honour. And here is the statement that they have released in this. I'm just going to read this whole thing because it's absurd, absolutely nonsensical, and does not in the slightest mention anything related to the case. It just Jussie Smollett black, therefore he innocent. That's basically what it does. The below is a statement from Dr. Melina Abdullah, director of BLM Grassroots and co-founder of BLM Los Angeles, regarding the ongoing trial of Jussie Smollett. As abolitionists, we approach situations of injustice with love. Is that what they did all last summer? I beg to differ.
Very tough love, maybe.
Yeah, tough love. That's what we're going for here. We approach situations of injustice with love and align ourselves with our community, which is why we burn all of their businesses down. Because we got us. So let's be clear. We love everybody in our community.
Except those who we punch in the face.
Yes, and those who are conservatives as well. They're house N-words and traitors. It's not about a trial or a verdict decided in a white supremacist charade. That's what this is. You know, criminal justice is a white supremacist charade. I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse was white, and he didn't get much of a good standing from the prosecutor, did he, really? He didn't get much of a fair go at. But anyway, let's carry on. It's about how we treat our community when corrupt systems are working to devalue their lives. In an abolitionist society, this trial would not be taking place, and our communities would not have to fight and suffer to prove our worth. I mean, he's an incredibly privileged actor who faked, seemingly, allegedly, because we'll all find out once this trial is over, but allegedly faked a hate crime to get a pay rise. I don't see him as a particularly worthwhile person, to be perfectly honest, all in all, because I forgot to mention as well, he is gay, so he was trying to make it seem that it was not just racially motivated.
Oh, so he's making it homophobic as well.
As well, you've got to pile them on top of one
fantastic.
another. But yeah, and also in an abolitionist society, this trial would not be taking place, so you don't care about people lying. I mean, we're already well aware of that, BLM, but carry on. Instead, we find ourselves once again being forced to put our lives and our value in the hands of judges and juries operating in a system that is designed to oppress us while continuing to face a corrupt and violent police department, which has proven time and time again to have no respect
Did Claudia
for our
Webb
lives.
write this?
Possibly. In our commitment to abolition, we can never believe police, especially the Chicago Police Department, over Jussie Smollett, a black man who has been courageously present, visible, and vocal in the struggle for black freedom.
God,
he is one of the most privileged people attached to this movement. I understand that you're all run by a bunch of corporate suck-ups who all managed to take all of your collective donation
He's
money.
struggling for his own blimmin' pay rise. What's that doing for black freedom?
Yeah, exactly. What is that doing for black freedom? And it's all just a bunch of meaningless intersectional slogans about systems of power, oppression, your position within those systems of power. All a load of absolute codswallop. So, while policing at large is an irredeemable institution, CPD, the Chicago Police Department, is notorious for its long and deep history of corruption, racism, and brutality. From the murders of Fred Hampson and Mark Clark, to the Burge tortures, to the murder of Laquan McDonald and subsequent cover-up, to the hundreds of others killed by Chicago police over the years, and the thousands who survived abuse. Chicago police consistently demonstrate that they are among the worst of the worst. Police lie, and Chicago police lie especially. And these incidents, which I'm not familiar with, don't have anything to do with this case. You know, Jussie Smollett was not murdered. He was not attacked. He was not abused by the Chicago police. He says he was attacked and abused by a couple of white supremacist MAGA hat wearing people in the middle of the night on the street. But the police aren't investigating they are investigating the veracity of those claims because it seems that he lied about it, BLM, and you don't care. Of course you don't care, because you've never cared about the truth. Moving on. Black Lives Matter will continue to work towards the abolition of police and every unjust system. We will continue to love and protect one another and wrap our arms around those who do the work to usher in black freedom and, by extension, freedom for everybody else. No, it's not for everybody else.
You've got no hope if these are the people you're going to be trusting.
Yes, if you're going to trust Jussie Smollett, then I don't trust you as a judge of character, to be perfectly honest. This doesn't obviously no way addresses any of the obvious lies and holes in Jussie Smollett's story, and there are many obvious leaps of logic in Jussie Smollett's story, but also just to bring this to mind as well, they're talking about the police department in Chicago, which is a deeply blue city and also one of the most crime-ridden cities in America. And the neighborhoods, those affected the most, are the black neighborhoods, the black ghettos, which depend on being able to have at least some form of police interaction there to avoid any of the violent encounters. Not that the police really do that much to avoid those in Chicago, as far as I'm aware, but at the same time, if they were to increase policing, it would probably do quite a bit to help the communities who BLM, I'm sure, would probably say most need that help.
Yes.
Because crime is not necessarily a result of poverty. Poverty is a result of crime because it ruins the neighborhoods that the crime takes place in. It means that people don't invest in it, and it just perpetuates a cycle of violence. And these people, if they want to get out of the cycle of violence and crime, need the police to be there to provide a barrier.
Yeah. And what is defunding them going to achieve?
Oh, that's always been the question, really, hasn't it? But yes, moving on from that, let's just take a little look at this clip talking about why Jussie thought that these people, these two white supremacists, attacked him in the middle of the street.
Why do you think you were targeted?
I can just assume, I mean, I come really, really hard against 45. I come really, really hard against his administration. And I don't hold my tongue.
I want to ask you about Jussie Smollett.
I think that's horrible. It doesn't get worse, as far as I'm concerned.
Were you aware that he made that statement?
I saw it. I don't know what to say to that, you know?
I think this interview was back in 2019, right after
An actor is really bad at lying.
I know,
brushing over it.
And there is no doubt in your mind
Maybe that's why they weren't paying
what
him enough.
motivated this attack.
I could only go off of their words. I mean, who says empire, this
people who
MAGA
paid you.
country,
No, the people he paid,
Oh, yes. No.
ties a noose around your neck
allegedly.
and pours bleach on you? And this is just a friendly fight? I will never be the man that this did not happen to. I am forever changed. And I don't subscribe to the idea that everything happens for a reason, but I do subscribe to the idea that we have the right and the responsibility to make something meaningful out of the things that happen to us, good and bad.
He's angry that he's never going to get that money back.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. Yeah, just absolute rubbish, just to perpetuate a victimhood narrative for his own sake, really, there. Yeah, and once again, none of that happened the way that he describes it, at least. The people who say these things and tie the noose around your neck are the people that you paid, Jussie. I mean, for the love of God. And what a shocker. What an immensely controversial thing. During the presidential administration of Donald Trump, a highly paid film and TV actor didn't like Donald Trump. How controversial, how stunning and brave,
Really upsetting
Jussie.
the fabric there.
Yeah, man, you were really going hard against the establishment line right there, Jussie. I applaud
What a
you for your
maverick.
bravery. Yeah, but let's move on because BLM are supporting this. And as we know, this is not the first time that BLM have supported a hoax. In fact, you could say their very movement was built off of the back of a hoax. Are you aware of the Michael Brown shooting in Ferguson in 2014?
Yes.
Yes, this was, of course, the thing that shot off the whole movement, made it go stratospheric and brought it to the public eye for the first time. And one of the slogans that they used as a result of the Michael Brown shooting was "Hands up, don't shoot," which was supposedly something that Michael Brown said right before he got shot by a police officer. But it's been pretty well documented at this point that this is not what happened. This is not how it happened. And this legal insurrection article, very usefully, breaks it down here. The Black Lives Matter movement was born of the Michael Brown shooting in Ferguson, Missouri, while the BLM founders started their organization after the prior Trayvon Martin case. It was Brown and Ferguson which launched the BLM movement into the public spotlight through the protests and riots in Ferguson. So even from the very start, they're just like going, well, we don't want to peacefully assemble. We've got to riot and we've got to burn things. Nothing was more associated with the BLM movement than the chant "Hands up, don't shoot," based on the narrative that Brown had his hands raised and said "don't shoot" when shot. The same chant drives protesters and rioters ripping up cities after the George Floyd killing. So yeah, they are still chanting this, despite the fact that it's been years since it happened, and it has repeatedly been shown to not have been the case. Brown wasn't surrendering, and he didn't say "don't shoot," and he wasn't a victim of police misconduct. Rather than the gentle giant he was portrayed as in the media, he sucker punched Wilson while Wilson sat in his police car, Wilson being the police officer who shot him, tried to grab Wilson's service pistol, and was shot when he charged Wilson a second time. We've got a quote here from the Department of Justice report, because immediately after all this happened, as a result of pressure from the riots, the Department of Justice looked into this and they did forensic evidence and they got all of the witness testimonies. And they say here, although there are several individuals who have stated that Brown held his hands up in an unambiguous sign of surrender prior to Wilson shooting them dead, their accounts do not support a prosecution of Wilson. As detailed throughout this report, some of these accounts are inaccurate because they are inconsistent with the physical and forensic evidence. Some of those accounts are materially inconsistent with that witness's own prior statements, with no explanation, credible or otherwise, as to why those accounts changed over time. Certain other witnesses who originally stated Brown had his hands up in surrender recanted their original accounts, admitting that they did not witness the shooting or parts of it, despite what they initially reported either to federal or local law enforcement or to the media. So people who went to the media and went, oh yeah, he was trying to put his hands up and they shot him anyway, when later questioned on it by the Department of Justice, were like, oh, okay, I didn't actually see anything. Prosecutors did not rely on those accounts when making a prosecutive decision, while credible witnesses gave varying accounts of exactly what Brown was doing with his hands up as he moved towards Wilson, i.e. balling them, holding them out, or pulling his hands up, and varying accounts of how he was moving, i.e. charging, moving in slow motion, or running. They all established that Brown was moving toward Wilson when Wilson shot him, although some witnesses state that Brown held his hands up at the shoulder level with his palms facing outward for a brief moment. These same witnesses describe Brown then dropping his hands and charging at Wilson. So for all intents and purposes, by everything that we can tell there, Wilson was justified in shooting in the same way that Rittenhouse was justified in shooting the people who were about to attack him, because the closer somebody gets to you, the more at risk you're in, because they, especially if you've got a gun, could reach for your gun, try and take your gun off of you, kill you, and who knows what else they're going to do with it at that point.
Yeah.
So this was, in my opinion, from all the information that I'm aware of, a very justified police shooting of a violent criminal who was trying to attack a police officer for some reason.
It's hard to know what else he could have done in that scenario.
Exactly. But BLM decided to turn this into a gigantic cultural movement and built their brand off of the back of it. So, great start, BLM. Well done. And
Sets
then
the theme accurately, at least.
Yes, and referencing Kyle Rittenhouse, you may be aware of Jacob Blake. Are you aware of Jacob Blake?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Those who aren't, Jacob Blake was the man who was shot, the black man who was shot by the police in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which started the riots, which led to the situation that Kyle Rittenhouse found himself in. And we've got here a statement by Patrisse Cullors, the executive director, Black Lives Matter Global Network, on the attempted murder of Jacob Blake, but of course, probably more accurate to describe her as Patrisse Cullors, wealthy landowner nowadays. She stated here, on Sunday, August 23rd, another black man, Jacob Blake, was shot in the back 7 times in front of his 3 children by police officers in Kenosha, Wisconsin, while attempting to enter his car. So there is in here, in that very first line, a massive lie by omission going on in this statement. Do you wonder why they maybe didn't mention anything that led up to that particular shooting? Because it doesn't really paint Jacob Blake in the best light.
Does it not?
No, there's footage of this. From what I'm aware of the situation, you can listen to the phone call that happened. Jacob Blake was a violent criminal who had a record, who went to his ex-girlfriend's house while she was like looking after the kids or something, unannounced, became very violent towards her, tried to sexually assault her by putting his hand down her trousers unconsensually. And then she called the police and mentioned him by name. She said, Jacob Blake is here, meaning that the police at least knew about him well enough that his name was enough to bring them out there. And then as he was trying to get into his car, he was like, I think he was either reaching for a knife in the car or had a knife in his hand already. The car is where the children were, so who knows what he could have done with those kids. He already tanked a taser from the police, or 1 or 2 tasers, so they just said, right, we'll have to shoot him then. So they shot him in the back 7 times until he was neutralized. He is not dead. He managed to make a recovery, although I believe that he is now crippled from the incident. Quite rightfully so as well, because he sounds like a scumbag.
Yeah, and an awful person to make a martyr of, even though he's not
Well,
dead.
BLM is not a great judge of character
No.
in that regard. But they carry on. Patrisse carries on here. We need to move away from a culture of punishment and terror and move towards a culture of care and dignity. Because, yes, Jacob Blake seems like a man who really cares about dignity.
Yeah, I don't think his other half received
would
much
feel the
care and
same.
dignity.
Yeah, so we need less policing and more social services. Once again, in all this, Jacob Blake's victim, I imagine, was probably a black woman. So they care more about the violent black man who got shot while he was perpetrating crimes than the innocent black woman who he was assaulting. Got your priorities straight there, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, any person who will shoot someone 7 times in the back is not shooting to slow someone down. They're shooting to kill. No, they are shooting to neutralize until the threat is dealt with and no longer a threat. But you wouldn't understand that because you actively hate policing. And if we move along, we can see other coverage of this. People, once again, trying to do the BLM tactic of carrying water for violent criminals. The Independent article by Nyla Burton saying, it doesn't matter if Jacob Blake committed a crime. Too many have implied today that black people should be perfect if they want to avoid being executed in the street. No, just don't be violent criminals who are resisting arrest. How about that?
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Not much to ask.
This kind of thing I describe it as junk news. It's got just as much content and value for you as junk food, let's be honest. So she carries on the eve of the Republican National Convention with the theme of Land of Promise, Donald Trump Jr. and prominent right-wing commentator Andy Ngo
Oh, no.
took to Twitter to use unrelated past charges allegedly filed against Blake to justify the shooting. Jacob Blake, the man shot by police in Kenosha, Wisconsin, has a history of assaulting police. He also has past charges for domestic abuse and a sex crime. There's a warrant out for his arrest. BLM rioters are currently destroying the city to avenge the shooting, Ngo tweeted, a sentiment that Trump Jr. then retweeted. I mean, the thing is, this all does matter a lot if you're dealing with a person who's resisting arrest because it allows you to assess the threat that you're up against. Okay,
Yes.
This guy has attacked police before. He has attacked many people before. He's got a warrant out for his arrest. This man is dangerous. We might need to neutralize him. Oh God, he's tanked a taser. We should probably get the gun out.
Yeah.
Yes. She carries on. I won't waste time litigating the details of the previous charges against Blake, even though there are a myriad of logical fallacies in Ngo's reasoning. I don't need to explain why you're wrong. It's just self-evident. Okay, Andy Ngo, if that is your real name. I don't need to explain the logical fallacies and a myriad of reasons why those past charges do not excuse what happened to him. To do so would be to fall into the trap that black people are constantly ensnared in. The trap that we must earn our right to live by being angelic, inhuman, and unmoving. No, that's not what anybody's asking of people. Just don't be criminals. And the thing is, most people, black or otherwise, know that. They aren't criminals. Most people aren't criminals. But the thing is, BLM and the movements and people like you deify these criminals and try and hold them up as some kind of paragon of virtue purely for the fact that they got shot while actively trying to avoid mentioning any of the reasons leading up to them being shot.
What's even more cynical than that is that in doing this repeatedly and applying these gaslighting tactics, they're almost trying to claim that this criminal behaviour is somehow an extension of blackness, which is not.
Yes,
I mean that's more racist than anything that can be accused of their oppressors by their
absolutely
standards.
Excusing people's criminal behavior as just part of their culture does not help anybody, especially the people who are the victims of the criminal behavior. And carries on to people like Ngo and Trump Jr. I say, we will defeat you. To all the Republicans gathering tonight to celebrate their stolen land of promise, I say, we will take back everything you have stolen from us. So this is the kind of hateful rhetoric that BLM inspires, all in defense of career criminals. I'll try and speed through a little bit of these because we're kind of getting on a long time. But if we move along, you may remember Daunte Wright, who was the man who was shot by accident while he was pulled over by the police earlier on this year. He tried to escape and resisted arrest, got into the car when he was being arrested and tried to drive off. A police officer, Kim Potter, tried to pull out her taser, shouted taser, 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 accidentally pulled out her gun and shot him. Ooh. He drove off and died, which is obviously very bad, really bad police conduct from Kim Potter, especially if you're trying to pull your taser between your gun. I understand it's a high-pressure situation, but no excuse for it. He should not have died in that situation. However, very clear accident. But BLM says otherwise. There are no accidents in police terror and white supremacy. We say his name, Daunte Wright. Like we've seen time and time again, peaceful protesters have been met with tear gas and riot gear from police. The police have done nothing but meet a hurting, blah, 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 community and violent, blah, blah, blah. This was not a police protester. Stop trying to draw false equivalences between criminals trying to escape or even innocent people trying to escape, which you should not do. You should never resist arrest. It's a terrible idea. But this was not a peaceful protester. This was a man trying to escape the police who was the victim of a terrible accident. But you're still trying to turn it into white supremacy. You're still trying to turn it into police terror and trying to compare him with a peaceful protester. If we move along,
really.
the thing is, he was not even what you could consider classically innocent, almost like every other one of BLM's martyrs, if you want to move along. So, calm as a bee, Daunte Wright's victims of little sympathy as Kim Potter trial gets underway. So, there have been two women who came out recently and told Fox News Digital that karma is a bee. Both women contend that Wright contributed at least partially to his own death when he attempted to flee at the traffic stop and his attempted arrest, although each woman acknowledges that it would be far better if the young man was still alive to answer for his actions in court. Wright lived a short but hard life. He was reportedly often armed and dangerous. One casualty of his cruelty, Caleb Livingston, saw his life changed forever in 2019 when Wright allegedly shot him in the head at a Minneapolis gas station. I think this is what one of the two women who Fox News has spoken to has said. The 16-year-old wasn't expected to survive the surgery, according to his mother, although he did pull through. He cannot walk or talk and must have 24-hour care. Wow, what a peaceful angel that Daunte Wright was. What a great demonstration of peaceful protest, eh?
And I take it that makes these women who have testified white supremacists?
Possibly.
Or by Black Lives Matter standards, that would follow, wouldn't it?
And in December 2019, Wright was accused of pulling a handgun on a young woman, choking her twice, and attempting to rob her in her own apartment. That person was evil and he didn't care about me in that moment, the young woman told Fox News Digital on Monday. Video found on Wright's phone reportedly shows him playing with a handgun in the victim's bathroom moments before the attempted theft. Wow. And then we can see what else BLM's hateful rhetoric causes, because as we move along, we've got a Fox News article that during the Kim Potter trial, you might want to pause that because I think there's some music playing, John. Yep, there we go. There is a BLM protester who's been accused of intimidating the judge for the Kim Potter case, who's being held without bond as the Daunte Wright case starts. I'm not going to read through this article, but basically the BLM protester was a guy called Cortez Rice, basically found the house or apartment of the judge who's presiding it over and filmed a lot of Instagram live clips in front of their place saying things along the lines of, here we are, we on her heels, waiting for the gang to get up here. So, obvious intimidation tactics, although it's not like we've not seen those from BLM supporters in the past.
Mostly peaceful occurrence.
Yes, absolutely. And the last one I just want to bring up is one that many people are going to be familiar with, which is Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor, of course, was the tragic victim of a police shooting, but not in the way that BLM would have you believe. The police knocked on her door because of the fact she was staying at her boyfriend Kenneth Walker's place, who was in the middle of a police investigation into drugs busting and all that sort of stuff. They knocked on the door. Kenneth got up in the middle of the night, thought it was some rival gang or someone like that, opened fire. The police opened fire as well, and Breonna Taylor was tragically caught in the middle of it. However, BLM and among a number of other media organizations have tried to perpetuate the narrative that she was shot in her bed by the police after they broke into their apartment on a no-knock warrant. So they've just basically put here, we're completely disgusted and outraged by the indescribable decision that has been rendered in the murder of our beloved Breonna Taylor, basically saying that it's really tragic, that it's disgusting that no further charges were brought ahead and nothing else happened to the police officers, despite the fact Kenneth Walker himself admitted that he was the one who originally opened fire. If he'd just answered the door, it wouldn't have happened, and the police were served a no-knock warrant, so if the police hadn't have knocked in the first place, giving him time to pick up his gun and open fire, none of that might have happened in the first place. Tragic accident, should not have happened, but that's just how it goes down. But BLM would rather tell you a false narrative so that they can raise money to expand Patrisse Cullors' property portfolio.
It seems that only the lowest lives seem to matter to them.
Absolutely. And if you move along, just to cap all of this off, Breonna Taylor's mum herself has said, I don't like Black Lives Matter, they're a bunch of frauds. Tamika Palmer, the mother of Breonna Taylor, blasted Black Lives Matter movement in Louisville, Kentucky in a since-removed Facebook post. I've never personally dealt with them and personally have found them to be a bunch of frauds. She called Kentucky State House Representative Attica Scott another fraud, and she says, I could walk in a room full of people who claim to be here for Breonna's family who don't even know who I am. Which I think really sums it up. BLM make a lot of noise. They make a big stink about anything whenever they get their hands on a story that they can manipulate, but at the end of the day, they do not care.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to check out all the premium content we have on the site.
Yeah, we've got loads, and it's all really, really good. So why should you sign up? Why should you support us? Well, because you're going to get stuff there that you don't get anywhere else. Like the cultural series that John and I have started, which is talking about the politics and philosophy of science fiction. Because everyone was demanding it. And John was like, let's do Star Trek. Okay. Everyone loved it. And they were like, okay, let's do Stargate. And he had never watched this. And so he's like, is this military propaganda? I'm like, no, it's not military propaganda. It's basically a soap opera set in a science fiction setting. But anyway, we've got really great stuff like that. And then we've obviously got our articles, which have got audio narration for the silver tier members, such as this anti-civilizational environmentalism by Hugo, as in, look at them. They want to actually erase civilization. And they're actually not very shy about saying it at this point. But anyway, moving on, we've got interviews with absolute mad lads, such as Miles of Kabul that you did.
Good guy. Did nothing wrong. Ironically.
This is the guy who had to be evacuated out of Afghanistan because he was on holiday there. Basically.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, there's loads of criticisms of him that are out there, but we just sat down and went through them, and none of them hold water. So
yeah, he seemed like a really nice guy, and he's got a very placid temperament. Like he's not like some sort of raging lunatic or anything. I was really surprised. I expected him to be mad. But anyway, we've also got loads of regular content, such as our book clubs. This is the Communist Manifesto that Thomas and I recently did. It's very interesting, if you're not a communist, to read the Communist Manifesto, because there are some telltale signs of conservatism that are embedded within it. I know that sounds hard to believe, but trust me, it's in there. Anyway, moving on, we've got our spicy podcast that we can't put on YouTube. Can't carry on talking about that on this channel. Anyway, we've also got the Contemplations, this one that you did with Josh, talking about Parliament.
Yeah, so
Does it work?
This is just an in-depth look at the system and where it comes from and why it's a bit of a meme. As mentioned, like the House of Lords. Why does that exist? It's literally just because like the Lords, the Burgesses and the priests and whatnot didn't want to sit with all the barons and whatnot. So they just separated into two groups in the King's Chamber, and then that became the two houses.
And that's how the system works.
Yes.
Amazing. And finally, we've got the epochs that Bo and I do every week. This was an amazing one. This was a Life of General Gordon. And I'm really glad I get to juxtapose this with the interview with Miles of Kabul, because you can see that these two characters, these two people are cut from exactly the same cloth. Like deeply Christian, like crazy adventurers, love living a life of danger. And the life of Gordon of Khartoum is honestly a real thrill a minute. Right now, I didn't know anything about him either, so Bo's taking me through what happened, and I was just wrapped. I had such a great time. But anyway, there we go.
And if you want to check us out on alt tech, be sure to follow us on Getter. So there's getter.com, and the @ there being lotuseaters_com, because lotuseaters.com didn't work on the @ but it is the
But
name.
you can't put dots in the @ names.
But anyway, go and follow us on Getter. And if you'd like to get access to all that premium content or all the free stuff we also have on the website, go to lotuseaters.com and subscribe. Thank you.